Property Tribes is on location at the ARLA Propertymark conference at London Excel, and I'm delighted to be joined by ARLA Propertymark CEO Nathan Emerson. And Nathan, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us down to this wonderful industry event. And you must be so delighted that you've been able to hold it because it's your 25th anniversary.
It is indeed. It's a big celebration for us as an organisation, but equally the celebration, I think, for people just being able to get back together in the room in the way that we really all want to do that, just to network, to catch up, to ensure that we're sharing best practice. There's a great feel and a great buzz about the event today. It's been superb.
No, absolutely. Now, you've come to your position at ARLA at a very challenging time in the industry, unprecedented circumstances and challenges for agents. How are you feeling as we come towards the end of 2021? Because the market has literally defied and exceeded all expectations, hasn't it?
It has, and I think we were very fortunate that we were able to keep the housing market open, both from a sales and a letting perspective. So that has been a back driver of the economy in a very big way. So that's been brilliant. But I think one thing we have seen for a lot of the people here in this room today, they've been working extremely hard. A lot of those are at a stage where they just need that little bit of a break and a little bit of a punch up, really. And I think today we've been able to give people that. We've got some great sessions where we're looking at where best practices going forward, how we're adapting with things, different legislation that's come in during the COVID period. But also, more importantly, I think, is also starting to think, what does next year look like? There's a different trading environment out there. We need to be aware of that, and we need to be ready to carry on and pick up the mantle, really.
Do you have any kind of predictions for the property market in 2022 from both the sales and the letting side? Because, I really expected it to soften after the end of the stamp duty holiday and, the ending of furlough and going into winter when sentiment typically tends to drop away a little bit. But, it's remained so buoyant. We've still got a really serious supply and demand imbalance. All the indicators is that it's going to stay very, very robust, certainly going forward into 2022?
Well, certainly the signs are there that we still have a healthy market. There are signs of slowing. There are some signs there. We are seeing cancellation rates on sales transactions have increased again now, which that shows that the vast heat is out the market, i.e. I've got to buy anything at any price. People are now reviewing and in some cases not going ahead with those purchases. So there is a little bit of a softening there. But I think by and large, the good news is there is enough activity to keep the market going. What would be ideal would probably be a levelling out and a nice stable level of activity continuously going. Nobody wants us to be in a position where it boosts and goes beyond the land of recovery and we end up with a very hard shock. But I think there are certainly signs of activity. We've got low interest rates at the moment, and even if they were to use a little bit of that to curb inflation, it's still not going to be detrimental compared to the long-term average of 4 and 5%. So we're well down there at the moment. There's every sign that the market should continue in a favoursome way, certainly into the first quarter of next year.
Now, COVID-19 brought some quite significant changes to the sector, the uptake of digital tools like digital viewings and so on, online viewings, agents working from home and so on. We saw some change, some kind of what I would say mini trends of people moving out of cities. What trends or things that we've seen during COVID, what do you think is going to really stick and stay in the market?
I think one thing that we're hearing, whether it's within our own sector, or actually you look at people in other sectors, is the work-life balance and the type of working arrangements that people are wanting. There is definitely a sea change in that environment. So if you look at a lot of the people that bought out in the areas of outstanding natural beauty and the Lake District and the Peak District and the Southwest and the coastal areas, a lot of those people did that because they wanted a lifestyle choice. They had the ability to work from home. They didn't have to necessarily work in the major cities. We've certainly seen that migration happen, and we will continue to see a degree of that as different companies explore different types of working practices, and indeed people actively go out there, certainly in other industries, maybe not so much our own, in other industries, they are actually now recruiting people for the talent and accepting that they will work in a different environment. So there has been that little bit of a sea change in that. I think time resolves all of these things and answers a lot of questions. So I think I'd be wrong to suggest that there are going to be massive dynamic changes in the long term with any of this stuff. It's, you get the initial reaction, then you get the levelling out process. I think it'll be just an interesting thing to watch that develop, really.
I agree. I guess, landlords have had a pretty tough time of it, probably, I would say, for the last 5 or 6 years, with increasing taxation, increasing regulation, increasing legislation, COVID-19. Going forward into 2022, do you think there's still something for landlords to be a landlord and to invest in buy-to-let?
Of course there is. I think landlords at the end of the day are, they are in it for a reason, and that is obviously to provide accommodation, and they are, whether they like it or not, they are effectively professional landlords nowadays. That is where that structure is being taken. Is it as lucrative as it was? Possibly not in some arenas. Do people still benefit from large capital upgrade growth, for example, which we've just seen with a number of 11-12% increases in price over the last 12 months. So landlords have seen benefits in other ways. It is becoming more of an environment where substandard accommodation and substandard actions by landlords is becoming less tolerant. But equally, that will eventually purify through the system. Now, what that does, of course, mean is there are, equally on the other side, there are tenants sometimes that don't live at the required standard that a normal person would want to be at. And very often, a lot of the issues that you find can often arise because of that. But I think so long as the landlord is in a position they're putting forward good quality accommodation at the requisite standard, that's all that you can ask of them, really.
I think, the risks for landlords have been amplified by COVID in terms of, tenant selection and so on. At Property Tribes, we've always advocated that certainly when starting out in buy-to-let, you should work with a reputable agent, and we always direct our members to ARLA because your members have voluntarily subscribed to professional standards. I think the role of the agent is going to be even more important going forwards in terms of risk mitigation for landlords. Would you agree? I
would. I think your agent is almost like an insurance policy. And if you think about it, as an individual landlord, you're 168, 169 pieces of legislation. You haven't got the ability nor the time to genuinely be able to do that. So you're playing Russian roulette. And at the end of the day, an agent is there because they are a full-time professional doing that for you. And, I would want to know in my case that if I'm having a degree of risk to that magnitude and there's somebody there for a small amount of money per month could effectively take care of those issues for me, why would I risk tens of thousands of pounds for the sake of £50 a month maybe on a management fee? But landlords do. And yet they will often be the same landlord when they're fined tens of thousands of pounds, all of a sudden then will come running back and using an agent. It's a short-term solution unless you are a very competent landlord who has the time and the ability to ensure you comply. It's a very short-term solution, and one which, if legislation starts cracking down, if a tenant has an issue at a property, then all of a sudden the risk is just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Well, I have all our property portfolio fully managed because I totally subscribe to what you say, Nathan. I think that letting a good, reputable letting agent is worth their weight in gold. To me, they're almost like a partner in my business, and I still work with one agent that I started with in 2004 when I first started building my portfolio. And I think agents, they really like to have these long-term relationships, and they can actually help landlords grow as well.
Of course they do. And absolutely, and it's almost like your doctor relationship in a way. You stick with the same doctor because he knows you, he knows what's wrong with you, he knows when you go to see, you know when you're off colour and when you're not. And that's the same with agents. People who swap agents all the time, and when an agent gets to know the property, they know the properties, they know the idiosyncrasies, they know what bits they have to be very careful of to make sure that everything keeps running and maintained itself well. So, there is very often chasing different agents for different fees every 5 minutes is again another falsehood really. But no, it is more a case of, for me, if you've got a good relationship with a good agent, work with them, and they will help you grow.
Yeah.
They'll protect you, they'll nurture you, they'll help you grow. It's as simple as that.
Well, hear. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you again, Nathan, for inviting Property Tribes along to Excel to the 25th anniversary. Congratulations to ARLA, a wonderful landmark event, and yes, really appreciate being invited down. Enjoy the rest of the event.
You too.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.